guys, welcome to reading. Today we're going to learn the last new thing about making connections. I'm so excited. So we've learned 3 types of connections so far. The first was text to self. And we said that text to self is when you make a connection from the book you're reading to something that's happened in your own life. And then the second type of connection we learned was text to text. This is where you connect one book with another book that you've read. And the last one that we learned on Friday was text to world. And here we talked about this is when you're reading and you make a connection from the text to something that's happening out in the world. All 3 of these text connections can be really helpful in helping you understand the story. But sometimes, and I've noticed this in the work you guys have been turning in, sometimes the connections we make aren't very helpful in understanding the story. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's pretend I'm reading a book about a bunny who's hopping through his neighborhood, past the pizza shop, all the way past the store. He gets to his grandma's house and he's so excited because it's his grandma's birthday. So if I stop and I say, oh, I can make a connection to the pizza shop. I have a pizza shop in my neighborhood and I have pizza on Friday nights. Is that connection helping me to understand what's happening in the story with the bunny? No, the pizza shop being in his neighborhood really is an important part of the story. And even though I do have a pizza shop in my neighborhood and I do get pizza on Fridays, that's not helping me understand what is happening with the bunny or how he feels. Now, if I said that I was excited when it was my grandma's birthday and we were celebrating, I got her a cake, I bought her a present, we got some balloons, it was so fun. Will that help me understand what's happening with the bunny? Yeah, I can understand what's happening and I know how the bunny feels. The bunny is excited to celebrate grandma's birthday. I know that because I was excited to celebrate my grandma's birthday. So even though sometimes when we're reading and we think of something else, it reminds us of something in our life or something we've read in another book or something in the world, sometimes those connections are useful to understand what we're reading, and sometimes they're not. So today, we're going to read a new book called A Chair for My Mother. And some of you might have read this book before, but what's going to happen is as I'm reading this book, I'm going to share some connections that I made, and I'm going to stick them up here on the poster. And when we're finished, you're going to get to help me decide if it's a helpful connection that helps me to better understand the story, or is it a connection that maybe was just me thinking of something that I already knew? So let's read A Chair for My Mother. So A Chair for My Mother was written by Vera B. Williams. My mother works as a waitress in the Blue Tile Diner. After school sometimes I go to meet her there. Then her boss Josephine gives me a job too. I wash the salts and peppers and fill the ketchups. One time I peeled all the onions for the onion soup. When I finish, Josephine says, "Good job, honey," and pays me. And every time I put half of my money into the jar. So I'm going to stop here because this reminded me of something in my life. So this reminds me of when I earn money and I feel very proud. I think that Josephine felt very proud doing jobs at the diner. It takes a long time to fill the jar this big. Every day when my mother comes home from work, I take down the jar. My mama empties all her change from tips out of her purse for me to count. Then we push all of the coins into the jar. Sometimes my mama is laughing when she comes home from work. Sometimes she's so tired she falls asleep while I count the money out into piles. Some days she has lots of tips. Some days she only has a little. Then she looks worried. But each evening, every single shiny coin goes into the jar. We sit in the kitchen to count the tips. Usually Grandma sits with us too. While we count, she likes to hum. Often she has money in her old leather wallet for us. Whenever she gets a good bargain on tomatoes or bananas or something she buys, she puts the savings that go into the jar. So I made a connection here because this reminds me the book says whenever she gets a good bargain on tomatoes or bananas, this reminds me of when I go to the store to buy bananas. When we can't get a single other coin into the jar, we are going to take out all the money and go and buy a chair. Yes, a chair. A wonderful, beautiful, fat, soft armchair. We will get one covered in velvet with roses all over it. We are going to get the best chair in the whole world. That is because our old chairs burned up. There was a big fire in our other house. All our chairs burned. So did our sofa, and so did everything else. That wasn't such a long time ago. So when I was reading this part and it said that all of their chairs burned up, that they all burned, their sofa, everything else was gone, this reminded me of last spring when there were tornadoes in Dayton, and a lot of our students and families and friends, and maybe even some of you, you lost everything or you lost a lot of things from your house in the tornado. So I know that the people who that happened to, they felt really sad when that happened. So I'm guessing that the little girl and her mother, they feel really sad that they lost everything in the fire. My mother and I were coming home from buying new shoes. I had new sandals. She had new pumps. We were walking to our house from the bus. We were looking at everyone's tulips. She was saying she liked red tulips, and I was saying I liked yellow ones. Then we came to our block. So this reminds me of spring because I love flowers. All right. So what we're going to do now is we are going to take a break from reading the book, and I want you to help me to figure out if these connections that I'm making are helpful to help me better understand the story, or if it was just something that I thought of while I was reading. So let me go back to page 1. So here I made the connection. The text said that every time, or when I finish, Josephine says, "Good work, honey," and pays me. So I said, this reminds me of when I earn money and I feel very proud. So I feel proud when I earn money. So that helps me to know that Josephine feels proud. Is this going to help me better understand the story? If so, give me a thumbs up. If it's not, if it's just something that I thought about, give me a thumbs down. Oh, nice job, guys. This is something that's going to help me to better understand the story. So I'm going to put it over here by the plus sign. It helps me to better understand the story. I know how I feel when I get paid and earn money for something. That helps me know how Josephine might feel. So the next one we have was on page 3. And on page 3, it says, whenever she gets a good bargain on tomatoes or bananas. And I said that this reminded me when I go to the store to buy bananas. Is this, give me a thumbs up if this is going to help me better understand the story, or a thumbs down if it's just something that I thought of. Right. This one, I thought of bananas, but does knowing that I go to the store to buy bananas, does that help me understand the story? No, the important part here was that Grandma puts the extra money she saves in the jar. So it doesn't really help me understand the story. It's just something I thought of. And then here on page 4, it said that all of their chairs were burned up. There was a big fire in their house, and all of their things were gone. And I said that this reminded me of the tornadoes last year and how things were lost. And this made me think of how all of the families and those of us who had to live through that, how we were really sad. So I think that this little girl and her mom are probably really sad. So did this help me better understand the story and the feelings of the characters, or was it just something I thought about? Right, thumbs up. It helped me to better understand the story because I lived through the time of all those tornadoes, and so did most of you. We can better understand what it feels like for someone to lose everything in their house. And the last connection that I made was here on page 5. And she's talking about how they were looking at the tulips, how she liked red tulips, and I was saying I liked yellow ones. And I said, this reminds me of spring. I love flowers. Does this help me better understand the story? Yes or no? No, this is a connection that doesn't help me better understand the story. Yes, I like flowers too, and I love springtime, but that's not helping me to understand what's going on in the story. So now I know a lot of you are probably thinking, hey, I might have made some of those connections that weren't helping me understand the story. And that's okay because a connection is just something that you think of as you're reading. But it's important when you're thinking of those connections to try and decide, does this help me understand the story or maybe it doesn't? So I know a lot of you probably want to finish reading that story, A Chair for My Mother. So it's going to be listed on your agenda today. Over on the right, it's going to say A Chair for My Mother, and there is a read aloud from YouTube where you can finish reading that book. All right, so make sure when you're reading today, you're thinking of connections and you're thinking of all of the things that you can make connections to, because those are going to help you, like I said, to better understand the story. Now, I want to show you what you're going to do today for reading. So in your packet, you're going to look today for week 3, day 1. And it says on reading that you were going to watch the video with Mrs. Wood today. So you just did that. Good job. And then you're going to read this story today. It's called Carl's Garden Problem. So you're going to read that. It has a front and it has a back. And then it says to answer questions 1 through 6. So you're going to answer these questions 1 through 6. And you're going to read those. And then you're going to upload those to Dojo. So there's not a camera on there. I forgot to put it on before I copied it. But make sure you read the story, you answer those questions, and then you upload it to Dojo. And I'm going to see you guys tomorrow because I'm going to test and see what all you have learned over the past couple of weeks about connections. See you guys tomorrow.